Today, we are diving deep into a vicious cycle that's playing out inside millions of people, a lot of times completely under the radar. We're talking about the dangerous tangled connection between a fatty liver and type 2 diabetes. For years, this was a huge medical puzzle, but now the pieces are really starting to snap into place.
So what really is the connection here? I mean, how can a problem that starts in just one organ, your liver, spiral into a full-blown crisis for your entire body's fuel management system? On the surface, they seem like two totally separate issues, right? But as we're about to find out, they are absolutely two sides of the very same, very dangerous coin.
So to untangle all this, here's our game plan. First, we'll get a handle on the incredible scale of this silent epidemic. Then, we'll look at the classic idea of how a fatty liver gets inflamed in the first place. After that, we'll untangle the metabolic feedback loop it creates, check out a huge scientific discovery that really cracked the code, and finally, look at what we can actually do about it.
All right, first up, this silent epidemic called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD for short. And let me tell you, as the title here says, it is so much more than just a little bit of fat in your liver.
You know, a really great way to think about NAFLD is like one of those Russian nesting dolls. It's not just one thing. The big outer doll, that's simple fatty liver, what scientists call steatosis. But when you open it up, you can find much more serious conditions hiding inside. Inflammation, which is known as NASH, and that can lead to scarring, or fibrosis, and then ultimately even cirrhosis.
And the scale of this problem? It's just mind-blowing. NAFLD affects up to 75% of people who are obese. So this is not some rare, obscure condition. It is one of the most common liver diseases out there, and it's tied directly to our metabolic health.
And here is the absolute crucial point to get. This is a two-way street between the liver and diabetes. Having NAFLD can be a major risk factor for developing diabetes down the road. But on the flip side, if you already have type 2 diabetes, there is a more than 70% chance you also have a fatty liver. They are deeply biologically connected.
Okay, so we know these two are linked. But how does a liver go from just having a little extra fat to being seriously, dangerously inflamed? Well, for years, scientists have used what they call the two-hit hypothesis to explain this really critical escalation. The whole process basically happens in two stages. The first hit is the fat building up, or steatosis, which is mostly driven by insulin resistance. But it's the second hit where the real damage kicks in. That fatty liver becomes super vulnerable to something called oxidative stress. You can think of it as a kind of biological rust, and that's what triggers the inflammation and pushes the problem into that much more severe condition, NASH.
And this inflammation is what kicks off the main event, a really vicious cycle that connects what's happening in your liver to your entire body's metabolism.
Now, to get this cycle, you have to understand a fascinating kind of weird detail. Insulin resistance isn't the same everywhere in your body. In your muscles and fat tissue, it means they just stop listening to insulin, so they don't pull sugar out of the blood. But in the liver, it's a selective deafness. The liver stops hearing insulin's signal to quit making sugar, but it can still hear the signal to make more fat. It's a huge problem.
And this diagram here, yeah, it looks a little complicated, but it shows us exactly how that feedback loop gets going. Over on the left, you've got insulin resistance in your muscle and fat cells. This creates two issues. Sugar isn't getting absorbed from your blood, and your fat cells start releasing fatty acids. And as all those arrows show, both of those things end up flooding the liver. The liver then just gets overwhelmed, and on the right, you see the result. It pumps out even more sugar, and it makes and stores more fat, making the whole situation worse.
Let's just break that down one more time. Your muscles aren't taking up sugar, so there's more of it floating around, heading right for the liver. At the same time, your fat tissue is releasing a flood of fatty acids, also heading for the liver. So the liver gets hit with this tidal wave of fuel, and it does two things. It pumps out even more sugar into your blood, and it turns all that excess fuel into new fat. That right there is the vicious cycle. So how much of this fat is the liver actually making itself? Well, the numbers are pretty wild. This process, it's called de novo lipogenesis, which literally just means making new fat from scratch, accounts for just about 11% of liver fat in a lean person. But in someone with NAFLD, that number shoots up to 38%. The liver is basically running its own fat factory in overdrive.
And all of this brings us to a huge scientific breakthrough that finally helps explain why the liver gets so stuck in this destructive pattern.
You see, for a long time, doctors knew inflammation was a big part of the problem, but for some reason, standard anti-inflammatory drugs just didn't work.
That was a big clue for researchers that something else, something much more specific, had to be going on inside those liver cells. And they found it, a specific protein called interferon regulatory factor 3, or IRF3. Now, normally, IRF3 is just a regular gene regulator doing its job, but in the context of obesity, it gets activated in the liver and basically becomes the master switch for all this inflammation and metabolic chaos.
So here's the chain reaction they discovered. First, obesity activates IRF3. IRF3 then flips the switch on another gene. And together, this IRF3 axis directly messes with the insulin signaling pathway in the liver. And the result? Exactly what we saw in that vicious cycle. The liver just keeps pumping out glucose it shouldn't, making insulin resistance even worse. As the lead researcher on this, Dr. Suraj Patel put it, this isn't just a random correlation. They found a causal link. This is the actual molecular machinery connecting the inflammation from obesity directly to the high blood sugar we see in diabetes. It's a massive finding.
Okay, so armed with all this incredible science, what can we actually do about it? Let's talk about the pathways to a healthier liver, both what works now and what's coming next.
The single most powerful tool we have in our arsenal right now is weight loss. And the science we just covered shows exactly why it works. Studies have shown that even a moderate 10% weight loss can dramatically reduce liver fat. And a huge reason why is because it helps turn down that out-of-control fat-making process in the liver, that de novo lipogenesis.
And the effect is just dramatic. You can see it right here. We're not talking about a tiny little tweak. This is a huge drop. By getting that fat content down, you're essentially taking the pressure off the liver, letting it get back to its normal job, and helping to break that whole metabolic vicious cycle.
And looking ahead, this deeper understanding of pathways like the IRF3 axis is unlocking a whole new generation of potential treatments. Scientists are now developing drugs that are super targeted to intervene at specific points in this cycle. Some are designed to reduce the liver's own sugar and fat production. Others help it burn more energy, and some even work in the gut to stop fat from being absorbed in the first place. It's an incredibly precise approach that's only possible because we finally cracked the molecular code.
So we end up right back where we started, but now with an answer. For so many years, we saw a fatty liver as just a symptom, a consequence of a bigger problem. But the science is now crystal clear. The liver is a central actor, a key driver of this whole metabolic crisis. And by finally understanding its role, maybe, just maybe, we can finally start to reverse this epidemic.